And to finish off Artificer Week, we are looking at the final subclass for the class, and the only brand new one as well, the Cartographer. A lot has already been said about the power of this subclass, and I'm not going to dispute that. It definitely feels like it is on the weaker side. But with that said, I think it has probably the single most interesting core feature of all of the Artificer subclasses. So let's take a look at the new Cartographer, starting as always with the description. Chart advantageous courses through turmoil. Cartographers are premier navigators and reconnaissance agents. Using their creations, cartographers can highlight threats, safeguard allies, and carve portals to distant locations. It honestly sounds pretty cool. Being able to utilize and create maps to aid in navigation, identifying threats, and manipulate movement seems like a ton of fun, so let's look at the features. As always at level 3, we get Tools of the Trade. This gives us proficiency with Calligrapher's supplies and Cartographer's tools. And again, if we already have either or both of these, we can swap them out with another artisan tool of our choice. Proficiency in Calligrapher supplies will be particularly useful for the second portion of this feature, scroll crafting, which makes it so that when we scribe a scroll, the amount of time required is cut in half. Like we've done for each of the Artificer subclasses so far, we are going to take a look and see just how good this crafting option can be. And spoilers, I think it's pretty great. Before we do though, the quest to 25,000 subscribers is looking more alive than ever. I've never even had close to this much growth in such a short period of time, and now we're in the final 500 subs, maybe even less by the time this video goes live. I honestly can't believe it. So if you like what I do and you'd like to support me on that quest, subscribing to the channel and clicking the like button while you're there helps way more than you might realize. Thank you so much. Alright, so spell scroll crafting does work differently as compared to crafting other magic items. For anyone that's been following along all week, don't worry, I'm not going to be showing the same table again. Instead, we have this table from the New Player's Handbook. This one shows the amount of time and money it takes to craft spell scrolls of various spell levels, ranging from a cantrip all the way to 9th level spells. Looking at cantrips, it's just 1 day and 15 gold, which means that with the discount from our feature, it's only half a day or 4 hours of work to make a cantrip scroll. This does actually get even better if we're able to avail ourselves of an assistant who can cut the time in half again, meaning it's just 2 hours of work to create the scroll. That's honestly pretty good, but for a cantrip, maybe it's still not worth it. Where things start to look more appealing is even just at level 1, since it's the same amount of base time, just 1 day. So cutting the crafting time down of a first level spell to just 2 hours with the help of an assistant, and for just 25 gold, can be legitimately very valuable. Even just continuing down the list, level 2 spells are 3 days and 100 gold. So down to a day and a half for us, or even just 6 hours with the help of an assistant. At this point, we're legit cooking here. Level 3 spells are 5 days and 150 gold. So 2.5 days or just barely over 1 day with an assistant. Even at 150 gold, this can be extremely potent. Now the thing is, that's probably where this feature stops becoming worthwhile or viable, at least for a very long time. The jump in cost for a level 4 spell moving up to 1,000 gold is significant. And then it gets even more crazy with a jump from level 5 spells at 1,500 gold to level 6 spells at 10,000 gold. Now yes, these spells do represent some significant power jumps, but it's starting to get a bit out of reach at this point. Here's the thing with this feature though. Even though it definitely can be worth it to prepare some extra spells for the use for the party when they need it, I think perhaps one of the better uses is that if you have a wizard in your party, you could just scribe scrolls for them that they can then use to add the spells to their spell book and expand their own repertoire. Now, to allow this, the spell needs to be one that is on the wizard's class list, and conveniently, there's a ton of overlap between wizards and artificers in this regard. On the level 1 list, the only spells that don't overlap are Cure Wounds, Fairy Fire, Purify Food and Drink, and Sanctuary. At level 2, the only ones that don't overlap are Aid, Heat Metal, Homunculus Servant, Lesser Restoration, and Protection from Poison. I'm not going to keep doing this for every level, but you get the point. There are a lot of spells that can be added to your wizard's list, greatly increasing their flexibility. This just kind of continues to underscore the Artificers, and particularly the Cartographer's, role as a support option. All of this, and I didn't even get to the fact that scrolls can allow you, on a successful check, to cast spells for which you don't even have spell slots available yet, which can get pretty crazy early on. All of that to say that while no, I don't think this is busted or anything like that, I do think it offers a ton of potential power to both the Artificer, but also to a wizard that might be in a party, and help to expose people to a mechanic that many don't often seem to engage with. Alright, moving on, but still at level 3, we get our Cartographer spells, which as always gives us certain spells that we always have prepared when we reach certain levels in the class. At level 3, we get Fairy Fire, Guiding Bolt, and Healing Word. At level 5, we get Locate Object and Mind Spike. At level 9, we get Call Lightning and Clairvoyance. At level 13, we get Banishment and Locate Creature. And at level 17, we get Scrying and Teleportation Circle. This list is not bad. It's definitely not as dramatic as some of the other subclass lists that we've seen, but it's certainly not terrible. Things like Healing Word, Locate Object, Clairvoyance, and especially Banishment can be very valuable. Probably the biggest miss, and the reason that this list flounders a bit as compared to other artificers, is that there is no clearly incredible option to use with our base class's level 11 spell storing item feature. There's no lightning bolts or fireballs or conjure barrages. Probably the best option would be Healing Word, but it's ineligible since it's a bonus action to cast, and the spell storing item requires the spell to be an action to cast. So we're kind of left with Guiding Bolt or maybe Call Lightning, but you're definitely not going to need 10 Call Lightnings in a day. So this is the kind of thing where the core design issue of the Artificer does shine through a bit. This is not a bad spell list, but because there's nothing exceptional to take advantage of with our spell storing item, it feels so much worse than the others, and that becomes really disappointing. Anyway, also at level 3, we get our core subclass feature, Adventurer's Atlas. Side note, I love the name of this feature. So with it, when we finish a long rest and are holding Cartographer's tools, we can create a set of magical maps, provided we are touching at least 2 creatures, one of which can be ourselves but is not required, and we can do up to a maximum number of creatures equal to our intelligence modifier. Once complete, each of the targets receives a magical map which constantly updates showing the relative position of all map holders, but it is illegible to others. The maps last until we die or we use the feature again, at which point all existing maps vanish. Then, while carrying a map, a target gains 2 benefits. First, they get a bonus 1d4 to initiative rolls. This is always really good. Having the opportunity to go earlier in combat is just great, especially when many of the new monsters since 2024 have some very high initiative bonuses. But, and certainly the more interesting option is the second bonus, positioning. With it, the target knows the location of all other map holders that are on the same plane of existence as itself. And when casting a spell or creating an effect that would require being able to see the target, a map holder can target another map holder regardless of line of sight or cover, as long as the map holder is still within the effect's range. It is worth noting that this is not restricted to spells. It does also say create an effect, so various class features might also apply. These are the kinds of features that I absolutely love because they invite so much creativity and thought to players and DMs. It's so much more than just big number go boom and legitimately makes you think about everything that you can do in a completely different way, and as a result can enable some things that are both incredibly powerful and were also just not possible before. Unique effects like this are so much fun as well because they continue to change and grow with the game. The more spells or species or subclasses that get added, the more opportunities there are for this to get even better and even more interesting. So what can we even do with this? And remember, it's not just the cartographer that's able to do this, it's any of the map holders. Some of the first things that jump to mind for me are more defensive options. There's plenty of creatures in the game that can swallow one of your party members, which often creates some pretty dicey scenarios. Well, now you could cast something like Vortex Warp, which would typically require you to be able to see the target, but now you can just pull them out, provided of course they are a map holder. Or if we consider something like Healing Word, there might be scenarios where your allies are around corners or in another room or being blocked by a larger enemy and you just can't see them anymore. But using this, we can still heal them. This gets even stronger if we consider that Walls of Force create an area of total cover, at least as Jeremy Crawford has stated on Twitter before. But this feature allows us to target creatures regardless of cover. So if a Mind Flayer separated someone from the rest of the party and took them down, we could still heal them. Admittedly, most of what I've come up with here is defensive or situational in nature, but this is one of those things that doesn't necessarily have any immediately obvious implications. It's the kind of thing where it comes up during play and you're like, oh damn, that's amazing, I hadn't even thought of that, which is always such an incredibly fun moment to have. One other potentially fun way to use this is that if you can somehow pass the map off to an enemy, maybe a big bad or one of their cronies or something. Nowhere in the description does it say that the target who receives the map needs to be the one that holds onto it. It doesn't say that it disappears if it's separated from the original target or anything like that. And it also confirms that this is a real physical thing that others can see and interact with, since it notes that it's illegible to others. Now, I'll be honest, this is still super ambiguous about whether it works or not. It's not clear if the person that receives it is now a designated map holder, or if it's just anyone that holds it is now a map holder. For fun, if we just assume that we can pass the map off to someone else and then they become a new map holder, this opens up some crazy possibilities, especially with circle casting, where you can now just straight up banish someone from a mile away without even needing to see them, which is hilarious. Again, I don't know if this works, it seems like it could, but at the very least, it's ambiguous. That said, I'm sure someone will definitely know the correct answer and tell me just how wrong I am. Let me know in the comments what ideas you come up with because I genuinely really want to hear anything you might think work well with this feature. It's got so much untapped potential currently. And finally, but also at level 3, we get Mapping Magic. This gives us two benefits: Illuminated Cartography, which allows us to cast Fairy Fire without expending a spell slot a number of times equal to our Intelligence modifier per long rest. And Portal Jump, which allows us on our turn to spend an amount of movement equal to half our speed rounding down to teleport to an unoccupied space within 10 feet of ourselves, or within 5 feet of another map holder that is within 30 feet of us. We can't do this if our speed is 0. So the thing with Illuminated Cartography is that it honestly isn't all that bad. Chris from Treant Monk's Temple has noted before how Fairy Fire is nowhere near as valuable in 2024 as it was in 2014, mainly because of how easy Advantage is to generate since the update. And this is very true, I will fully agree with that. The only thing that I'll add though is that getting to cast a spell for free certainly does make it a little bit better. Something that would have been nice and would not have been the first time that we've seen it is if they allowed us to change the casting time of the spell to a bonus action when we cast it in this way. If they'd done that, it wouldn't necessarily tie up our first round of combat, or at least one round of combat. You'll notice that a large portion of the rest of the subclass does revolve around Fairy Fire. This is another common design trend that we are seeing in 2024 D&D. Subclasses having very clear instructions about how they expect it to be played. I will say though that as compared to the Ranger being so focused on Hunter's Mark, I do find the design less egregious when it's isolated to a subclass. Portal Jump is interesting, as if we use the base teleportation feature, it will oftentimes cost us more movement than the teleportation provides. For example, if our speed was 30, it will cost us 15 feet of movement to teleport 10 feet. But if, say, our speed had been cut in half and was down to 15, it would only cost us 5 feet to teleport 10 feet. Either way, this seems like it is only particularly relevant if you're looking to clear some short gap or chasm. On the other hand, the ability to teleport to another map holder within 30 feet for the cost of half our movement can be great, particularly if we get caught in some difficult terrain, and especially since it doesn't cost an action or bonus action to do it, it's just movement. I think Mapping Magic is fine. It provides some reasonable but also somewhat niche utility. It's a pretty good feature. Next up at level 5, we get Guided Precision. This lets us, when we cast a spell from our Cartographer spell list, or hit a creature affected by our Fairy Fire with an attack roll, to add our Intelligence modifier to the damage of one of the damage rolls. Just so we're all clear, the only spells on our Cartographer spells list that would be impacted by this are Guiding Bolt, Mind Spike, and Call Lightning. And again, to clarify how that works, spell attacks do qualify as attack rolls. So there's kind of two qualifiers happening independently of each other. If we cast Guiding Bolt at someone, for example, regardless of whether or not they are under the effect of our Fairy Fire, they will take the bonus damage. But if the target is under the effect of specifically our Fairy Fire, not anyone else's, any attack roll or spell would work. Again, spell attacks are attack rolls. And the feature also makes it so that we can't lose concentration on Fairy Fire by taking damage. This feature just requires a lot of effort to make it work for such a minor benefit. In past videos this week, we discussed similar features on different subclasses where getting a bonus to spells required some steps. Notably for the Alchemist, it required casting spells with some very specific damage types. This requires you to use very specific spells, or having already sunk an action into getting Fairy Fire up, hoping the creature fails their save, and then cast a qualifying spell on the following turn, hope you hit or that they fail their save, all to get what, like 3 or 4 damage? At least this feature doesn't have limited uses, so in that sense, it's free damage. But it's just crazy when you compare it to something like the Artillerist's Arcane Firearm, which is just like, sure, every spell just gets a free 1d8. At level 9, we get Ingenious Movement, which makes it so that when we use our base Artificer feature, Flash of Genius, that allows a target that failed an ability check or saving throw to add our Intelligence modifier to the roll, ourselves, or another creature of our choice within 30 feet of us, can then teleport 30 feet to an unoccupied space that we can see all as part of the same reaction. This is legitimately pretty cool. Odds are, if we're using Flash of Genius, it's probably because the creature failed a saving throw. These often represent damage or control effects or something that signifies that the person making the roll might be in a bit of trouble, especially if they failed. Now we can just let anyone rush to their aid, or allow them to immediately potentially escape with a significant teleport. That's the key part here, that the person that teleports does not need to be the person that benefited from Flash of Genius, but rather anyone that's within 30 feet of us. So we could quickly send in a reinforcement, or have them bounce to the back of the line out of danger. It's very good for quick movement, defensive, or even offensive positioning, but obviously is hard to be represented on a spreadsheet. And finally, at level 15, we get our capstone, Superior Atlas. This improves our Adventurer's Atlas and gives it 2 benefits. First is Safe Haven, which makes it so that when a map holder would be dropped to 0 hit points, but not killed outright, they can destroy their map and regain hit points equal to twice our Artificer level, so 30 at the time that we gain this feature. And then the target can teleport to an unoccupied space within 30 feet of another map holder. Crucially, not just us, any map holder. This isn't bad as far as cheat death passives go, especially since it could potentially apply to anyone in our party, and even has a little get out of jail free teleport associated with it. And finally, the second bonus is Unerring Path, which allows us, if we are one of our map holders, to cast Find the Path once per long rest without expending a spell slot, preparing the spell, or providing material components. I mean, I don't really know how much there is to say about this. It is extremely flavorful, but to have played 15 levels of the subclass just to get an exploration spell isn't exactly something that gets me particularly excited. Overall, I think the Cartographer is a very cool subclass that enables some interesting play patterns. Party members are going to be bouncing all over the place with teleportation. And most importantly, I think there is either something already or there will be something in the future that can truly massively take advantage of the positioning benefit from Adventurer's Atlas. I don't think it's the strongest subclass on paper, but I legitimately think it sounds incredibly fun to play, so I am so here for it. So that was it. Thank you so much for coming along with this Artificer subclass journey with me. 5 videos in 5 days isn't something that I've ever done before, but honestly, it was a lot of fun. Let me know your thoughts on the Cartographer, check out some of my other videos, but otherwise, take care.